Today we're going to be talking about Ultraman, which is an anime that premiered on Netflix in 2019. They do this thing where they drop all the episodes for the season at one time. So we got season 1 in 2019, season 2 in 2022, and then season 3 just dropped this year in May. So you've got all 3 seasons now streaming on Netflix. It's a total of 31 episodes, so not a very difficult watch, but pretty good. The official Netflix synopsis for this: Shinjiro Hayata learns that his father passed on the Ultraman factor to him and fights against evil. So a little background on Ultraman. Ultraman was a show originally debuted in Japan back in the 1960s, so it's got a very long history. And if you know anything about kind of Japan Tokatsu, which is essentially like live action sci-fi TV, one of the more popular ones in the United States is Super Sentai, which is what the Power Rangers was developed out of. But it was a live action series. Along with that though, they created a manga that was almost like a continuation of the 1960s story, and this is what got adapted to create the anime that premiered on Netflix. So they just finished their 3rd and final season. Before we kind of get into it, spoiler alert ahead. So if you do want to go see it, go watch it and then come back for my review. If you want to hear my full review before you go watch it, we can do that too. Let's get started. So, the anime. Man, I thought it was a really good TV show. You know, anime is kind of up or down, and I feel like the market has gotten so flooded now with the amount of anime that comes out. You kind of have to pick and choose what you want to see. I thought this looked pretty good just based on the animation style and the art. It's kind of got a little bit of that 3D animation woven into it. I think most of it's 3D, but I just like the texture of the characters where you get some of that 2D art, but you get a lot of the 3D motion, which just makes everything just kind of fit together a little bit better. Now, one of the original 3D animation shows that I remember is a 90s or early 2000s show called Reboot. And that was really bad. All the characters look real blocky. It kind of looked like you're watching a video game. But obviously animation has come a long way in that last 20 to almost 30 years. So I really enjoyed the show. It's got 3 seasons. So 13 episodes in the first season, 6 episodes in the second season, and then 12 episodes in the 3rd season, giving us a total of 31 episodes. So all the episodes are now streaming on Netflix. What the TV show is about is Ultraman, who was a hero that was an alien that came to Earth and gave a dude powers, and he was able to grow giant size. And if you know anything about Japanese Tokatsu or Super Sentai, their science fiction is this larger than life stuff. Essentially, however, the Ultraman was able to fight aliens that were coming to attack Earth with these Ultraman powers. The guy that had the Ultraman powers worked for like this super secret agency for like the government called the SSSP, and as Ultraman saved the Earth from countless giant aliens that were trying to destroy the Earth. Think like Godzilla-sized aliens. So when you look at like the scope of like Godzilla, then you kind of see like how big Ultraman was. This human being size would grow to fight these aliens. So in the show, essentially, where we pick up is that Ultraman is now an old man. It's like in his 60s or something like that. And he's got a teenage son. And what he finds out is that his teenage son has now inherited his powers, which is pretty cool. But his teenage son knows nothing about his history, essentially, as Ultraman. So it's, if you've ever watched Invincible on Amazon, it almost seems kind of similar to that in that storyline, but except, you know, different. but essentially his son doesn't really know. And what he starts doing is he brings his son into the SSSP, which is the government agency, to start running tests, etc. And now he's starting to get him to experience what it's like being the new Ultraman. In future state, he just wears a suit, and the kid does have powers, but he doesn't grow to like the skyscraper size that his dad did when he was saving the world back a long time ago. The TV series takes you through pretty much the growth of his son, who is trying to learn how to, be a superhero, essentially. But he goes through all the same things that teenagers do. The brooding, he's got a love interest, he's got this tension between him and one of the agents that works for his dad that's kind of like his supervisor, if you will. And kind of they go back and forth. But I thought it was a really clever series. It kind of keeps you on your toes. The action is pretty awesome, I will say. I love the fight scenes. Because of how they kind of shot everything, it really almost looks like live action, but it's animated. So you get a lot of natural motion. I would have to assume that the show was shot using motion capture just because of how realistic everything kind of looks, and the fights are pretty sick. So if you think about kind of like the animation styles, like when you watch a Dragon Ball fight or Dragon Ball Super, Dragon Ball Z, everything moves really fast and they're kind of kicking and punching, etc., etc. But when you watch like live action fighting, it just has this very visceral impact to it. It's not the kind of impact that you get from like traditional 2D animation, but it's almost, it's hard to explain it. You kind of have to watch it. But I will say I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. Just the impact, you get the superpowers, you get the, he's got this, I think it's called a specium ray that he shoots like out of his arms. It's kind of like a throwback to like the original Ultraman. But one of the cool things about it is not only do you get a new Ultraman, you get all these other different types of Ultraman. And if you've ever watched any of the older Ultraman, you know that there's like these different versions, and like I said, they have these powers. But kind of how they built it in the show is that each person gets their powers for different reasons, but they don't necessarily have powers more so than they just have a suit. I think by the time you get to the end of the show, I think there's 3 of them that actually have powers that are related to alien species, etc. But for the most part, most of them have just suits that give them different abilities, and then some have actual legit powers. So like Ultraman's son, the teenage son, he actually does have the alien powers. He can fly without the suit. He's got kind of a like superhuman strength and invincibility without the suit. But when he puts the suit on, he gets even more powerful. The whole shtick of the show is really the fact that they kind of make it this political battle of the townspeople, or the city kind of rallies behind Ultraman in the beginning. They're really excited to have a new superhero that's here to save everybody from the different attacks. But there is a group of aliens that's trying to turn the city and all the people of the world against Ultraman, to say, hey, you've got this superhero, but is he really a superhero, or is he just causing more damage? So they kind of use a little nostalgia to kind of say that when the first Ultraman appeared back in the 60s, all he did was beat up these giant monsters and destroy everything. And, they kind of go through the whole of how they have to rebuild buildings on the time. Like, you think of kind of like the Avengers when they kind of took that in Spider-Man, of how they had to do the cleanup after the Battle of New York. So it kind of goes through that to where you start seeing the restlessness of people in the world, of all these alien battles, and how it's just causing all this damage and destruction. Come to find out though, an alien that was working at the government agency was actually the person behind all of this. And they want the Earth to join this thing called I think it's called like the Universal World Council or something like that. of the Galaxy World Council or something like that. And they almost want to rid the entire universe of Ultraman altogether, because they have this concept that if a world has an Ultraman, someone who saves people, then they won't really rely on this council for protection. They'll just rely on Ultraman. So it gets real. Do the people support Ultraman because he really has Earth's best interest because it is an Earthling? Or do they completely get rid of Ultraman because he can't really help save anybody? So I thought it was a great show. I highly recommend it. I think it doesn't take long to get into the show. You can actually get into it pretty quickly. Now that it's all on Netflix, you can just binge watch it. I think all the episodes are somewhere between 20 to 30 minutes. They're not very long, but you can watch it in succession. If I had to rate it, I'd probably say 3 out of 5. And here's why I would say 3 out of 5. And I will say this too. I only watch animes except for like Dragon Ball Z with subtitles. That's just kind of how I started watching different animes. Of course, the OG Dragon Ball, I watched that on dub because that was the only thing that was available back in the States in Toonami. But most everything else I watched with subtitles. So I highly recommend watching it with the subtitles. It just makes it that much more, I don't know how to say it. Just when you hear that, I don't know. I really enjoy it. But they do have a dubbed version that you can listen to that's got some American actor voices. I think Josh Hutcherson is one of the voices of one of the characters. I think it's the teenage son. Different options if you want to go the dub route versus the traditional subtitle route, but I recommend the subtitles. I'll give it like a 3 out of 5. And the reason I give it a 3 out of 5 is because it's not like the greatest anime that's ever created. But I thought for a Netflix anime that's kind of like short story form where every episode has its own thing, but then you kind of have a through line, I thought it was pretty good. For me, it kept me engaged. It allowed me to, connect to the characters a little bit. And I felt like there were some threads maybe that got pulled that didn't, go all the way through. But I thought it was still a really good TV show for the most part. But 3 out of 5, if I'm reserving like things that really, really impact me, 3 out of 5 for sure. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you all go out and catch Ultraman on Netflix. It is now the entire series, 3 seasons, is now streaming live on Netflix. If you want to catch more of my reviews, you can go ahead and hit the subscribe button and drop a comment if there's something else that you want me to review or something else that you kind of want to just chat about. Ring the bell so you can get alerts on when I post new videos. I'm trying to drop videos every week, and I'm trying to just watch more stuff in general, but I've got a lot of stuff in the tank that I'm just going to be chit-chatting about coming soon. So I hope you all have a great morning, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace.